Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the morning edition of Verdict 2014. I'm your host Frank Pereira. Here are the headlines. Voting is underway in Jharkhand's 20 assembly seats in the second phase of polls today. Fate of over 200 candidates, including former chief ministers, to be sealed. 18 assembly seats in Jammu and Kashmir will go to vote today. Tight security in place after a series of recent terrorist attacks. And another Sarpanch critically wounded in Jammu and Kashmir after being shot at by suspected militants in Shopian. Voting is underway in Jharkhand for the second phase of assembly polls today. As many as 20 seats are at stake in this phase. The 7 districts going to polls are Seraikela, Karswan, West Singhbhum, East Singhbhum, Kunti, Simdega, Ranchi and Gumla. Close to 4 lakh voters are expected to cast their ballot today to elect among 223 candidates in the fray. Here's a detailed report of what's at stake in Jharkhand in the second phase.
20 assembly segments spread over 7 Maoist-troubled districts are headed to polls in this phase. In the backdrop of a threat to disrupt polls, security forces have stepped up guard.
जिला और पुटका के मतदान कर्मियों को रवाना किया जा रहा है। उसके तहत सभी तैयारी कर ली गई है। पुलिस की अलग व्यवस्था की गई है। पुलिस के लिए जितनी भी गाड़ी थी वो सर्जेंट मेजर के द्वारा वहां पर व्यवस्था की गई है।
16 of the 20 constituencies are reserved for tribals and personnel have been asked to follow standard operating procedures. 223 candidates, including 35 women, are in the fray in this phase. Over 5,000 polling stations have been set up for over 44 lakh eligible voters. Despite running the state government after snapping ties, the JMM and Congress are contesting against each other in all the 20 constituencies. The BJP is contesting on its own in 18 segments. Jharkhand Vikas Morcha, JVM and TMC are the other big players. This phase stands out also for having 2 former chief ministers in the fray. Leader of the opposition in the assembly and former chief minister Arjun Munda is contesting for the 5th time from the Kharsavan seat as a BJP candidate. Another former chief minister Madhu Koda, who had ruled the state for 23 months as an independent MLA and headed a Congress JMM RJD combine, is in the fray from Majgaon on a Jai Bharat Samta party ticket. Former deputy chief minister Raghuvar Das is also in the fray from the Jamshedpur East seat. Jharkhand recorded a decent 62% voter turnout in the 13 Maoist-affected constituencies that went to polls in the first phase. That bodes well for this round too. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, 18 assembly constituencies in Jammu and Kashmir will also go to polls today. Tight security is in place for this phase in the 5 districts of Jammu and Kashmir going to polls in the second phase, especially in the backdrop of terrorist violence in Arnia and Srinagar over the last week. There are some big names, including the sitting Deputy Speaker and 4 ministers whose future is at stake today. Here's more.
19,000 polling booths for over 12 lakh voters who are eligible to cast their ballot. A sizable enough challenge for security forces who fanned out across the 18 assembly constituencies going to polls. An additional 220 companies of paramilitary security forces have been deployed. Preparations have been fine-tuned on the basis of lessons learned from the first phase. Multi-layered grids are in place to foil any spoilers.
सिक्योरिटी का पूरा इंतजाम है, ट्रांसपोर्ट डिप्लॉयमेंट है ये है। मैं लोगों से गुजारिश करूंगा कि वो पहले ही पोलिंग स्टेशन पर 8 साढ़े 8 पर ही आ जाएं ताकि जल्दी अपना वो वोट डाल दे और इसमें ज़्यादा पार्टिसिपेशन करें।
The 18 assembly segments going to the hustings in the second phase are spread over 5 districts, 2 in the valley and 3 in Jammu region. 175 candidates are in the fray. All seats face multi-cornered contests. The fate of separatist leader turned politician Sajjad Ghani Lone, who is contesting from Handwara in North Kashmir, will be keenly watched. Of the 175 candidates, there is the present Deputy Speaker, 4 ministers and 11 other sitting MLAs in the fray in this round. Sakina Ittu is the lone woman minister in the Congress NC government. The first phase of polling in Jammu and Kashmir on the 25th of November had seen a record turnout, a mammoth 72%. Over the last week, a spate of terror attacks, first in Arnia and then in Srinagar, have threatened to play dampener for this round. but the mood of the people sends out every signal of the democratic process being uppermost. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, suspected militants have shot yet another Sarpanch in Kashmir ahead of the second phase of polling in the state. Shiraz Ahmed Bhatt, who joined the PDP early on Monday, was shot at last night in Shopian. He was rushed to a hospital in Pulwama where his condition is stated to be critical. The incident comes a day after a Sarpanch belonging to the ruling National Conference was shot dead by militants in Shopian. This comes in the backdrop of militants warning people against participating in the electoral process. The killing took place days after the terrorist attack in Arnya that left 11 dead and a grenade attack in Srinagar in which 8 were injured.
नमाज पढ़ के आया, घर में बैठा। जब सोने का टाइम आया तो फिर मैंने आवाज़ सुनी, फायर की। फिर मैं भी निकला, मैंने ये रास्ते में पड़ा हुआ देखा, उसकी लाश। बस इतना ही मेरे को पता।
Well, there's a standoff brewing between Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah and journalists. Now, journalists boycotted Abdullah's rally on Sunday after a tiff between the media personnel and security guards. Reports say that journalists who had gone to cover Omar's rally in Mendar area in Poonch district were manhandled by the security officials. Security officials also allegedly asked the journalists to go out and were asked to cover the event from outside. Following this, all the media personnel decided to boycott the event and even staged a dharna against the behavior of the security officials. Meanwhile, BJP President Amit Shah addressed rallies on Monday in 4 Jharkhand constituencies headed to polls in the third phase of the 5-stage elections. Now, Shah addressed rallies in Hazaribagh, Chhatra, Ramgarh and Swang Bokaro that go to polls on the 9th of December. He hit out at the Congress, saying that the grand old party had little to show in terms of achievement in nearly 6 decades of rule. Shah also attacked the Congress on the corruption issue. He claimed that the BJP at the centre had already made a difference in the 6 months of being in power and urged the electorate to vote in a majority BJP government for development of the mineral-rich state, pointing at the mess in Jharkhand over the last 14 years of multi-party rule.
जैसे ही चुनाव समाप्त होगा, ये सब झारखंड को लूटने के लिए इकट्ठा हो जाएंगे और फिर से लूट मचाएंगे। मित्रों, इसलिए इस बार फैसला करते वक्त आप याद रखिएगा कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार बनाकर झारखंड को मोदी जी ने शुरू की हुई विकास यात्रा के साथ जोड़।
Well, that's it on this edition of Verdict 2014. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.